You are not being exploited because you are naive. You are being exploited because your brain has a specific blind spot. It tracks obvious harm, but it does not track invisible extraction. So you keep asking, why do I feel tired after talking to this person? And you blame your mood, your stress, your sensitivity. Meanwhile, the real answer is colder. Somebody is taking value from you in a way that does not trigger your alarm system. Quick thing before we go deeper. We are building toward our next subscriber milestone, and your subscription genuinely helps us reach more people who need this kind of information. And if this hits a nerve, tap like too, because that signal tells the algorithm this is worth distributing. All right, back to the uncomfortable part. If you have ever walked away from a conversation feeling oddly smaller, like your confidence got quietly shaved down, you already know what I mean. This is not just about manipulation in the obvious sense, like lying or stealing. This is about the subtle economics of attention, emotion, reputation, and decision-making. People do not just exploit money. They exploit your clarity. They exploit your conscience. They exploit your social risk tolerance. And the reason you do not realize it is because the exchange looks like normal human interaction. Here is what I have observed over and over. Exploitation rarely announces itself as aggression. It announces itself as need, or as charm, or as just this once. And most people never connect the dots because they are looking for villains, when the real mechanism is incentives plus psychology. That is the frame. On incentives plus psychology, let me show you the first mechanism, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Most exploitation is not force, it is outsourcing. That sounds simple, but think about it. Outsourcing is what companies do. They push costs somewhere else so they can keep the profit. People do the same thing emotionally and socially. They outsource discomfort. They outsource responsibility. They outsource uncertainty. They outsource consequences. And if you are the kind of person with a high tolerance for discomfort, you become the perfect place to dump those costs. So what does it look like in real life? Someone is late, and somehow you are the one reassuring them. Someone forgets something important, and somehow you are the one fixing it. Someone has a conflict they created, and somehow you are the one mediating it. They are not stealing your wallet. They are stealing your friction. They are using your nervous system as a trash can for what they do not want to feel. Now here is where it gets interesting. Your brain rewards you for this. Not because you love suffering, but because you get a microdose of identity reinforcement. You get to be the capable one, the stable one, the mature one, the person who can handle it. That is not a compliment. That is a hook. Because the moment your identity is attached to being the one who can take it, you stop noticing you are being used. You start calling it loyalty. You start calling it love. You start calling it professionalism. The mechanism behind this is something like a social version of loss aversion. In behavioral economics, we hate losses more than we like equivalent gains. Socially, you hate losing your identity position more than you enjoy the benefits of saying no. If you are the dependable one, saying no feels like a loss of self, not just a boundary. So you pay. Quietly, repeatedly, and you call it normal. But there is another layer. The people who exploit you often do not even think of themselves as exploiters. They think, well, you are good at it. Or, you do not mind, and you taught them that. Not with words. With your nervous system staying calm while your life gets rearranged around their needs. So here is a question that matters. Why do you feel guilty when you stop outsourcing your stability to other people? Hold that question, because it connects to the second mechanism, and this one is even more invisible. Exploitation hides inside ambiguity. If I steal $20 from you, you can name it. If I repeatedly take 2 minutes of your attention, 3 favors, 1 emotional processing session, and a constant readiness to respond, you cannot name it. There is no invoice. There is no receipt. And without measurement, your mind defaults to, it is probably fine. Psychologists call this problem cost salience. We react to costs that are vivid and immediate. We ignore costs that are diffuse and delayed. That is why people will drive across town to save $5 on a product, then waste 2 hours in a conversation that drains them for 3 days. The $5 is salient. The 3-day mental fog is not. Exploiters thrive in that fog. They keep the exchange unmeasurable. Notice the pattern here. They rarely ask for one big thing that you would evaluate. They ask for lots of small things that you will not evaluate. They ask in ways that make refusal feel socially expensive. Can I just vent for a second? Can I ask you something quick? Can you look at this real fast? I just need your opinion. And because the request is framed as small, your brain does not switch into negotiation mode. It switches into politeness mode. That is the trick. They keep you in politeness mode. Politeness mode is a psychological state where you prioritize relationship smoothness over resource accounting. It is useful for civilization. It is also how people quietly drain you. And if you have ever thought, I do not know why I cannot stand them, they have not even done anything, that is your brain detecting extraction without a clear story. You feel the cost, but you cannot narrate the crime. So you doubt yourself. That doubt is the gateway. Now let me make it sharper. There is a specific kind of ambiguity that is basically an exploitation machine. Unclear roles, unclear friendship roles, unclear work roles, unclear family roles. If you do not have a defined role, you become a flexible role. And flexible role is just a nice way of saying container for whatever needs doing. If you want a concrete test, it is this. When the relationship is unclear, who benefits from the lack of clarity? Usually not you, but stay with me because the next mechanism explains why you can be extremely intelligent, extremely perceptive, and still miss exploitation for years. It is because exploitation often runs on intermittent reinforcement. This comes straight out of learning psychology. If a reward happens consistently, your brain adapts and stops chasing it. If a reward happens unpredictably, your brain becomes obsessed. Aruiki. Slot machines are built on this. So are certain relationships. The exploiter is not cold all the time. They are warm at random intervals. They give you just enough appreciation, just enough intimacy, just enough respect, just enough I could not do this without you to keep you investing. And here is the part that people hate admitting. You do not get addicted to the person. You get addicted to the pattern. Your brain starts trying to solve them. It starts running predictions. If I say it the right way, they will finally understand. If I help enough, they will finally reciprocate. That is not love. That is a variable reward schedule hijacking your dopamine system. Now watch how this connects to exploitation. The unpredictable reward makes you overestimate the good and underestimate the cost. You remember the high points. You explain away the low points. You treat the relationship like a puzzle with a hidden solution instead of a system with a consistent output. Let me say that again because it matters. You treat it like a puzzle, not a system. A puzzle has an answer. A system has incentives. And that brings us to a microhook you need to hear. The most dangerous exploiters are not the ones who take. It is the ones who make you feel chosen while they take. Because feeling chosen triggers status. And status is a drug. They imply you are special to them, so you accept special burdens. You become the only one I can talk to. The only one who gets me. That is not intimacy by default. That can be an isolation tactic, even if they never consciously planned it. It narrows your social comparison. It makes you less likely to reality check with other people. And once you stop reality checking, you are inside their narrative. Now we hit the midpoint, and I want to flip the entire thing. What if the reason you do not realize you are being exploited is not just that they are subtle? What if it is that your mind is actively protecting the relationship from the truth? Because seeing exploitation has a cost. It forces a decision, and decisions create conflict, and conflict threatens belonging. So your brain, especially if you have a high need for social harmony, will literally distort perception to avoid the moment of choice. This is not metaphorical. There is research on motivated reasoning. We interpret evidence in a way that preserves what we want to be true. If you want to believe someone cares about you, you will reinterpret their extraction as they are going through a hard time. If you want to believe your workplace is fair, you will reinterpret being overloaded as they trust me. That is not stupidity. That is survival psychology misfiring in modern social systems. So the deeper question becomes, what belief does your mind need to protect so you do not have to confront the relationship? And now we can talk about the fourth mechanism, the one that ties everything together. Exploitation succeeds when it is routed through your self-concept. People think boundaries are about saying no, but boundaries are actually about what story you tell yourself when you say yes. Exploiters are extremely sensitive to what you take pride in. If you take pride in being kind, they present their request as a test of kindness. If you take pride in being competent, they present their request as a test of competence. If you take pride in being independent, they present their neglect as giving you space, and you end up doing everything alone. They basically speak in the language of your virtues, but they use it as a lever. This is why generic advice fails. Just say no ignores the fact that your yes is not about them. It is about who you are allowed to be. So here is what I've discovered is the cleanest way to see exploitation in real time. You stop focusing on what they ask for, and you start tracking what identity they are trying to activate in you. Are they activating rescuer? Are they activating peacemaker? Are they activating the strong one? Are they activating the cool, low-maintenance one? Because the moment your identity is activated, your critical thinking goes down and your automatic behavior goes up. Think about this for a second. You can resist a request. It is harder to resist an identity. Now let me give you a mental model that actually unifies all of this, so you can use it tomorrow, not just nod along today. I call it the extraction triangle. It has three sides: access, ambiguity, and asymmetry. Access means they can reach you easily. They have a direct line to your attention, your labor, your emotional energy. If access is high, exploitation becomes convenient. Ambiguity means the terms are unclear. No defined roles, no clear expectations, no measurable reciprocation. If ambiguity is high, you cannot audit the exchange. Asymmetry means the costs and benefits are uneven. They gain relief, status, progress, comfort. You gain vague appreciation or the promise of future closeness. If asymmetry is high, you are funding their life with your bandwidth. When all three are high at the same time, you are not in a relationship. You are in a human subscription service. And the reason you do not realize it is because each side of the triangle masks the others. Access makes it feel normal. Ambiguity makes it hard to argue with. Asymmetry is rationalized by identity and intermittent reinforcement. So how do you break it without turning into a paranoid person who thinks everyone is out to get them? You lower one side of the triangle on purpose. Lower access, delayed responses, fewer touch points, structured availability, not as punishment, as design. People who care will adapt. people who exploit will escalate or disappear, and that information is priceless. Lower ambiguity, make the terms speakable. What exactly do you need from me? How often are you expecting this? What are you going to do on your side? Most exploitative dynamics collapse the moment you ask for definition, because definition is the enemy of extraction. Lower asymmetry. You start trading, not giving. That sounds harsh until you realize it is how healthy systems work. Reciprocity is not romantic, it is stabilizing. The point is not to keep score. The point is to stop being the only one paying. Now here is the final piece, the one that makes the whole topic almost unsettling. The strongest sign you are being exploited is not that you feel angry. It is that you feel confused. Confusion is what happens when your social brain senses unfairness, but your identity brain forbids you from labeling it. Confusion is the psychological holding cell where exploitation waits until you either normalize it or finally name it. So if you take anything from this, take this practice. When you feel that specific fog after interacting with someone, do not ask, "Was I nice enough?" Ask a colder, more useful question. What did they just extract from me, and how was I coached to volunteer it? Because the moment you can answer that, the spell breaks. Not because you become cruel, but because you become accurate. If this changed how you see a specific person or pattern, I would genuinely like to hear what you noticed in the comments. And the next time you feel that quiet drain you cannot explain, remember, exploitation does not always look like an attack. Sometimes it looks like you being very, very proud of how much you can take.